Hi everyone, I'm meteorologist Craig Flint. It is time for another Weather Academy. And well, here we are in the throes of winter, right? Well, lately it's felt more like winter. So perfect for all the outdoor activities with ice skating and the ice coverage expanding on Lake Erie. But really, up until this point, it hasn't been all that bad. And even still, I mean, temperatures in the 20s, teens, and single digits at night, that's cold, but certainly not that bad, right? So winter so far has been pretty tame. So what we're going to discuss is, now that we're on the other side of the winter solstice, and as we start heading towards the summer solstice, we've got a lot of changes. So even though this is the scene, we're in the throes of this wintry pattern, there are some things that are pointing in the direction towards spring and summer, which means brighter days, warmer temperatures. That's all coming in just a few weeks. So I wanted to kind of review basically the month of February and then going into March, because we still have a solid 2 months of winter, well, like a month and a half to get through. The solstice, not until June, so when you talk about the solstice, we're talking about the winter and summer solstice. But we can have extremes here in the month of February, so if you go back and you look at the records, which go back to like the 1800s or something like that, the warmest ever in terms of a record in February, warmest day on record, 77. Interestingly, just what's that, 4 years ago, 2017, when we hit 77 degrees. So it has been that warm before. Well, we take a look at the flip side of the coin, and the coldest day in February ever, that is minus 18, when the mercury dropped to minus 18 6 years ago. 2015, again, records go all the way back to like the late 1800s. So what's interesting about this is that we've had both of our extremes, the warmest February day and the coldest February day, within the last 4, 5, 6 years on record. That means all time. So I just thought that was an interesting note, kind of show you the extremes of February. So even though we're kind of in this, locked into this wintry pattern, it can get into the 70s, which is rare. And 2015, again, minus 18, that was, for many in the Northeast, the coldest year, or the coldest February ever on record. You might remember that one back to February 2015. Let's fast forward and jump ahead to March, because March is when we start to get more of that variability. As the atmosphere tries to balance itself out, you get more temperature swings, usually you get stormier. And as we look at some of the extremes from March, look at that, the warmest day ever in March, 82, happened a bunch of times in 1910, 1938, 1945, and as recently as 1998. So we've been into the 80s a handful of times here through the month of March. Flip side of that, the coldest March day where the record low temperature dropped to minus 9. Y'all got to go back to 1980 for that. So that's an interesting stat, right? So again, those big temperature swings this time of the year, or I should say into March, become more common. So let's talk about why, okay? You get these temperature swings, and why also we start to tack on the daylight here. So there you are on the blue marble that we call planet Earth as we look down at it there, and our favorite yellow star right there, the sun. So basically, the amount of sunlight as we go from now into March, the sun angle becomes more direct in the higher latitudes where you and I live. So the amount of sun, it directly relates to your latitude. And the higher latitudes, like where we are, will gain sunlight faster, or increase the sunlight, increase the daylight hours faster compared to lower latitudes like Miami, Florida. So we'll take a look at some of those numbers in specific. for you coming up. The sun angle increases after the winter solstice, slowly but surely, gets higher in the sky, and the rays become more direct here in the mid-latitudes and high latitudes, which increases not only temperature, but the amount of daylight. So let's kind of break this down a little bit and put this into some perspective for you. So basically, between now, right now, and March 31st, we average about a little over 2 minutes a day, 2.5 minutes a day from now right through the end of March, the 31st. But remember I was telling you how it directly relates to latitude? Look at Duluth, Minnesota. From now to March 31st, they average over 3 minutes of daylight. But then you go down to Miami in lower latitudes, they're gaining a measly 1 minute of daylight between now and March 31st. So that kind of puts it into some context. The higher you are in latitude, the faster you're gaining that daylight. And Erie, again, over 2 minutes of daylight now between right now and the end of March. But let's take this a step further, and we'll talk about the winter solstice versus the summer solstice and how much time, and it's pretty eye-popping actually. So if we take a look at December 20th, 21st to June 20th, 21st, we gain 6 hours and 9 minutes of daylight between the winter solstice and the summer solstice here in Erie. Look at Duluth. 7 hours and 19 minutes is their gain in daylight. So again, higher the latitude, the faster you're gaining that daylight, the more you're gaining that daylight. And then Miami, down here in South Florida, 3 hours and 13 minutes between the winter solstice and the summer solstice. So not only are we watching average high temperatures, which will be increasing, the daylight will also be increasing. You probably already noticed it. And as we go deeper into February and especially into March, that's when we gain daylight the fastest. And then it starts to kind of level off as we get towards the end of the March and into April, May, and June. But pretty impressive, to say the least, especially, I mean, yeah, we're gaining over 2 minutes now, but when you look at the winter solstice to the summer solstice, I mean, you gain almost a full day, right? So I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, here's the thing. The math that actually proves all of this is really complicated, like extremely complicated, and I'm just a meteorologist. In full disclosure, I am not an astrophysicist, and there's equations, and it has to do with your elevation and the declination of the sun in the sky. It's all real complicated stuff. So basically, the bottom line here is a couple things. Gaining daylight fastest. The sunlight becomes more direct in the mid and upper latitudes. Average high temperatures are increasing, basically from this point right now through the summer solstice. Now, the other simple theory that kind of proves, well, I mean, it's a fact really. The other simple answer, I should say, that proves all of this, that proves this math, is the Earth is in fact round, and it does spin on its axis at 23.5 degrees. So even though we're in the throes of winter right now, we've got some things to look forward to. More daylight, average high temperatures increasing, and pretty soon everyone's going to be out on the boat and barbecuing. In just a few short weeks. So hang on. We still have a little bit more winter to get through, though. I just thought that was kind of some interesting stats and numbers to show you that, yeah, even though it's cold and wintry, if you kind of drill down into it, you're getting more daylight, and pretty soon we'll start to see those temperatures climb. That's going to do it for this edition of Weather Academy. If you have any questions, weather questions that you want us to delve into, you can email us. Right there's the email address. It's weather@wjettv.com. Coming up next week, we'll be back with another topic right here on YourErie.com for the Your Weather Authority Weather Academy. Thanks for logging on.